On January 3, 2026, the global political landscape was irrevocably altered by a high-stakes military maneuver executed by United States Special Forces, known as Operation Absolute Resolve. This covert operation targeted the Venezuelan presidential compound in Caracas with surgical precision, leading to the apprehension of Nicolás Maduro and his wife, Cilia Flores. The international community watched in astonishment as the once defiant leader was transported under heavy guard to New York City to face a litany of federal charges, primarily centered on narco-terrorism and drug trafficking conspiracy. This event marked the culmination of years of escalating tension and a series of intensive indictments issued by the U.S. Department of Justice. Following the capture, President Donald Trump declared that the era of the Maduro regime had officially ended, signaling a radical shift in U.S. foreign policy towards South America. The vacuum left by Maduro's sudden removal created an immediate and complex power struggle within Caracas, as various factions of the Venezuelan military and the ruling United Socialist Party attempted to maintain order. In the immediate aftermath, Trump asserted that the United States would play a central role in the transition, stating that the U.S. would effectively manage the country's logistical and security apparatus to prevent total collapse. This bold assertion was met with a mixture of celebration from the Venezuelan diaspora and deep concern from international legal scholars regarding national sovereignty. As the dust settled on the military operation, the focus shifted toward the domestic political theater in Venezuela, where the opposition, led by María Corina Machado, and the remnants of the Maduro administration, led by Delcy Rodriguez, began a delicate and dangerous dance for legitimacy. The U.S. government quickly moved to secure vital infrastructure, most notably the state-owned oil facilities, asserting that protecting these assets was essential for global energy stability and the eventual economic recovery of the Venezuelan people. This military intervention set the stage for a series of diplomatic engagements that would challenge traditional notions of democratic transition, as the White House began to prioritize pragmatic stability over the immediate installation of the opposition leadership that had long been recognized by many Western nations as the rightful victors of previous elections. On January 15, 2026, the world witnessed a historic and deeply complex diplomatic encounter at the White House between President Donald Trump and María Corina Machado. Machado, who had recently been awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for her relentless pursuit of democratic restoration in Venezuela, arrived in Washington seeking formal recognition as the rightful leader of her nation. However, the atmosphere of the meeting was characterized by a palpable tension that highlighted the divergence between Machado's democratic aspirations and Trump's transactional approach to foreign policy. While Machado represented the moral and electoral mandate of the Venezuelan opposition, Trump had publicly expressed skepticism regarding her ability to consolidate power and command the respect of the Venezuelan military. In the days leading up to the meeting, Trump had made several controversial statements, suggesting that Machado lacked the necessary strength to govern and instead praised Delcy Rodriguez, the acting president and former vice president under Maduro, for being easy to work with. This public positioning created a difficult backdrop for Machado, who had spent years as the face of the resistance against the very administration Trump was now seemingly willing to accommodate. During their face-to-face discussion in the Oval Office, Machado sought to remind the American president of the massive support she garnered during the 2024 elections, which were widely viewed by international observers as fraudulent, but won by her movement in spirit and tally. The conversation reportedly touched upon the necessity of a swift transition to a fully civilian-led democracy, yet Trump remained focused on the logistical realities of oil production and regional security. The meeting was a study in contrasts, a Nobel laureate advocating for institutional integrity and a billionaire president focused on the bottom line of American interests. This friction underscored a growing fear among Venezuelan activists that the United States might favor a Maduro-like government, retaining the existing power structures without Maduro himself, rather than supporting a total democratic overhaul. Despite these underlying tensions, the meeting was framed by the White House as a critical step in the stabilization process, though it left Machado's political standing in a state of precarious uncertainty as she navigated the complexities of being a guest of a superpower that appeared to be hedging its bets. In a moment that defined the 2026 diplomatic visit, María Corina Machado performed a gesture of profound symbolic weight by presenting her Nobel Peace Prize medal to President Donald Trump. This act, described by Machado as a personal symbol of gratitude for the decisive action taken by the U.S. military to remove Nicolás Maduro, sparked immediate and intense debate across the globe. Machado framed the gift as a tribute to the Brotherhood of Liberators, invoking the historical legacy of figures like Simón Bolívar. By handing over the prestigious gold medal, Machado aimed to forge a personal bond with Trump, who has frequently and publicly expressed his desire to be recognized by the Nobel Committee. This gesture was seen by some political analysts as a masterstroke of ego diplomacy, designed to secure Trump's personal loyalty to the Venezuelan cause at a time when his administration seemed to be drifting toward an alliance with the remnants of the former regime. Trump accepted the medal with visible satisfaction, later taking to social media to praise Machado's wonderful gesture of mutual respect and great taste. However, the reaction from the international community was swift and varied. The Norwegian Nobel Institute was forced to issue a clarifying statement, noting that while the physical medal is the personal property of the laureate and can be gifted, the official title and honors associated with the Nobel Peace Prize remain legally and historically tied to Machado and cannot be transferred to another individual. Critics of the move argued that by gifting the medal, Machado was subordinating the moral authority of the Peace Prize to the whims of American hard power. Conversely, her supporters argued that in the desperate struggle for Venezuela's future, no symbol was too sacred to sacrifice if it meant securing the support of the world's most powerful leader. This act of giving became the primary image of the visit, overshadowing the complex policy discussions and highlighting the unconventional nature of the 2026 Venezuelan transition. It served as a reminder that in the new era of global politics, personal rapport and symbolic tributes often carry as much weight as formal treaties or diplomatic protocols, particularly when dealing with an administration that prioritizes personal recognition and bilateral loyalty over traditional multilateralism. Beyond the symbolic gestures and political meetings, the core of the 2026 U.S. intervention in Venezuela was rooted in the control and rehabilitation of the nation's vast energy reserves. Following the capture of Maduro, the Trump administration moved with unprecedented speed to secure the Orinoco petroleum belt, which contains the world's largest proven oil reserves. Under the banner of Operation Absolute Resolve, the U.S. military and Department of the Treasury began a process of active management of Venezuela's state-owned oil company, PDVSA. President Trump was explicit about his intentions, stating that the U.S. would ensure that Venezuelan oil was no longer mismanaged by corrupt socialist leaders and would instead be utilized to lower global energy prices and pay for the costs of the U.S. intervention. This strategy involved the seizure of numerous oil tankers and the negotiation of new export contracts that bypassed traditional Venezuelan institutions, sending shipments directly to American refineries. The administration's focus on oil explains the paradoxical praise for Delcy Rodriguez, who, as a pragmatic member of the previous administration, possessed the technical and bureaucratic knowledge required to keep the pumps running. For the Trump White House, the primary objective was not merely a change in leadership, but a total restructuring of the Venezuelan economy to align with U.S. strategic interests. This oil-first policy caused significant friction with María Corina Machado and her advisors, who argued that the nation's natural resources should be managed by a transparent, democratically elected government for the benefit of the Venezuelan people. The U.S. approach raised concerns about a new form of resource-driven interventionism, with critics arguing that the United States was treating Venezuela more like a corporate acquisition than a sovereign nation in transition. However, from the perspective of the White House, the rapid stabilization of the oil sector was the only way to prevent a total humanitarian collapse and to ensure that the Absolute Resolve mission was self-funding. The tension between economic exploitation and national reconstruction became the defining feature of the U.S.-led transition, as the global energy market reacted to the sudden re-entry of Venezuelan crude under American supervision, significantly impacting international oil prices and shifting the geopolitical influence of the OPEC nations. The aftermath of the Machado-Trump meeting left Venezuela at a critical and dangerous crossroads, with the country's future split between two competing visions of governance. On one side stands María Corina Machado and the Democratic Opposition, who, despite the symbolic gift of the Nobel Medal, found themselves increasingly sidelined by a White House that prioritized stability over democratic purity. After her lunch at the White House, Machado sought refuge in the halls of the U.S. Congress, where she met with a bipartisan group of senators who continued to champion her as the only legitimate leader of Venezuela. These lawmakers expressed deep concern over the Trump administration's willingness to negotiate with Delcy Rodriguez and other Chavista holdovers. On the other side is the U.S.-backed interim arrangement, which sees the American government working closely with the remaining Venezuelan bureaucracy to manage the daily operations of the state. This pragmatic approach has created a bizarre political reality where the U.S. military occupies the country. The former president is in a New York jail, and the former vice president remains in the palace under the watchful eye of Washington. The Venezuelan people remain caught in the middle of this high-stakes game of shadows, facing an uncertain future where the promise of democracy is weighed against the reality of foreign control. The 2026 transition has become a test case for a new era of American foreign policy, one that is unapologetically interventionist, economically driven, and personality-dependent. As Machado returned to Venezuela, she faced the daunting task of maintaining her popular movement while the U.S. government continued to reshape the country's economic and political landscape from the outside. The ultimate success or failure of this transition will depend on whether the absolute resolve shown by the United States in removing Maduro can be matched by a commitment to restoring a truly sovereign and democratic Venezuela. For now, the image of the Nobel Peace Prize sitting in the Oval Office serves as a poignant reminder of the price of liberation and the complex, often contradictory nature of modern diplomacy, where the lines between a rescue mission and a takeover are increasingly blurred in the pursuit of global stability and national interest.